I'm JP, the Stable Cyclist, and everything we do on this channel is looked at through the lens of mental health, including this week's race video. Now, for those of you new to this channel, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in 2020, and although that was when I was diagnosed, I had lived with untreated bipolar disorder for nearly a decade. And most of that time I had suffered from depression, but there was one bright spot. In 2018, my body climbed out of that depression pit for just a while, and I was able to put together a really good spring of training. And my family and I headed off to the Badlands Gravel Battle, and I was able to get the win in the race that year. And I also met a lot of new people. I met friends like Jasper Klein, who would become and still is a close friend of mine. The impressions of the Badlands were so strong on me that I decided to do the Mahahe 100 in 2019. But in the spring of 2019, my body and mind, more importantly, went off the cliff once again. And I struggled to get through the rest of that spring. Some things in my life were marginally functional. I could still do my job, and I could still function a little bit in other parts of my life. But when it came to racing, I was a complete and utter disaster. In August of that summer, I would attempt to race the Mahahe 100, and I would death march my way to the finish line, completing the race, but in the process putting myself into an even deeper mental and physical hole. And from there, my life just spun wildly out of control over the next 13 months. Until eventually I completely broke in September of 2020 and found myself sitting in clinic asking for help. So while this year my ultimate goal is to get to the starting line of the Mahahe 100 and have some closure, getting to the starting line of this year's Badlands Gravel Battle felt equally as important to me. 2018 doesn't seem like that long ago, but it is incredible how much the gravel landscape has changed just in 5 years. Back then in 2018, nobody had a skin suit, and nobody was using aero socks, and hardly anybody had a power meter, and nobody cared about what kind of hydration pack you were using. Today, everybody has aero socks and skin suits and aero bikes and power meters, and they're all wearing U-Sway hydration packs because Dylan told them that's the most aero thing to do. You get the picture. It's a completely different landscape than it was in 2018. The race itself starts in Medora, North Dakota, and uses gravel roads on the west side of the national park and travels all the way to Teddy Roosevelt's former Elkhorn Ranch before turning around and doubling back. I'm a lot further back than I wanted to be in this start line picture because there was a pretty long line at the bathroom. We started with a neutral rollout down, wait for it, Interstate 94. I mean, this is North Dakota, but once we hit the gravel a mile later, it was full on. Now, at this point, a series of unfortunate events is going to start to play out for me. Most of them are completely my fault. To start with, I inexplicably turned off my GoPro as we entered the interstate, and so I missed all of the early action. Next up, I was working pretty hard to stay in the lead group, but there's a problem. We were coming down a hill, went over a cattle guard, and took a hard left. And as we did this, 5 wild horses jumped out into the road and split off me and the people behind me from the rest of the main group. Which would be awesome to see, except this guy forgot to turn on the GoPro. This video would be so much better, and people would click on it if you had viral footage of horses breaking up a lead group in a race, not to mention the thumbnail you could have gotten. Once the horses got out of the way, the lead group was gone. And shortly after, I had the revelation that I in fact had not remembered to turn my GoPro on. And so I started to fiddle with it and get it turned on. And you can already guess where this is going. You know it. I dropped it into the road and it bounced into the ditch. How are they gonna take you seriously with moves like this, buddy? I often talk about how therapy has helped me, not just with my mental health, but in life. And this is one of those direct situations. In the past, after I found my GoPro, I would have been freaking out about how much time I had lost. And I would have ripped out of there like it was the start of an F1 race, only to wilt and be tired 5 minutes later. But I didn't do that this time. I realized the horses were not anything I could control, and that the GoPro was completely my fault, and it was done, and I couldn't do anything about it at this point. But I also realized that my abilities hadn't changed, so off I went down the road to slowly try and pick off as many guys as I could, one at a time. Somewhere after aid station 1, I shifted my chain right into the spokes in my rear wheel. And as I got the chain back on to both the cassette and the crank, I ran my pinky finger between the chain and the crank, gashing it open. I didn't even realize I had done it at the time. Honestly, I was fine. I was just bleeding a little bit, and again, the misshift didn't change my game plan. So back to trying to catch people and riding at a certain power. As we neared the halfway point, I had been chasing down this group of 3 guys for the last 4 miles, and I had finally caught them. And as we were climbing this long, steep climb...
Otra vez. That's all good.
I did it again. I shifted my chain right off of everything. This time, I was afraid it was catastrophic. It took me over 2 minutes to get everything functioning again. And in that time, 6 more guys passed me. And all that work I had been doing for the last 25 miles became undone. But this was an 80-mile race. And over the last few years, I've tried to always play the long game. And so it was back to being steady Eddie and following the game plan that I had set out from the beginning. But I added a note to that game plan: don't use your easiest gear anymore. It's off limits. That was super annoying given how hilly this race was, but it was less annoying than standing on the road again for 2 minutes trying to get everything fixed. In these long races, there are huge stretches, sometimes hours, where nothing will happen. And if you're solo, like I was, you are left alone to your thoughts. I wondered what my family was seeing in the national park. I thought about my friend Trevor, who passed away in December, and wondered what his wife and kids were doing today. And then I thought about a lot of weird stuff too, like, I wonder if there's dinosaur bones under that butte. And every so often in the loneliness, I'd see a speck appear a long ways off. The next rider in front of me that would motivate me to push more until I caught them.
You okay? No. Lights just going out?
Yeah.
And then it would start back over. Pushing hard, drinking my nutrition, thinking about dinosaurs, looking at the scenery, and looking for specks over and over. The other thing I thought a lot about was pain. That morning I had released a pre-race pep talk to myself on YouTube. And in that video I had reminded myself that for years as I suffered depression, I couldn't feel anything. I didn't really feel emotions or feel pain. And so as the pain came on in the race, I just leaned into it. Sometimes the little things bring us the most joy, and I was full of joy that day. Sure, my race had been a total mess, but I wasn't lying on a couch somewhere, staring at a wall, wondering when this was all going to end. I was alive, and I could feel exactly what my body was doing. And that's greater than any result I could have come up with on the day. The real question I know everybody wants to ask is, what place did you get? And for all that great legs and feeling good and chasing guys down, I finished 7th. But here is the staggering reality. The second I finished, I was trying to regain my bearings and get my feet back under me. And my kids came sprinting up to me. And instead of saying, "Good job," or "We're so proud of you," they yelled, "Look what we got at the park gift shop. Aren't these cool?" The people around you love you. And they don't care about your sporting results or your job performance, because they don't define you by those things. They love you just the way you are. It's easy for us to think that our sporting performances or our academics or our job performances or social media clicks or our video clicks are what define us, because they are tangible. We can see them. In some cases, we can feel them. But the reality is, you are enough, just as you are. We tend to be that person on the starting line, forgetting about all the hard work that we've put in. And we look around at everybody and think that we aren't good enough because we don't have the right hydration pack or the right bike or skin suit. When all along, everything that we need to be successful is right in here. You are enough because you are. Thanks for hanging out today. We meet here every week to talk about bikes and mental health and much more. And if you want to come along for the next ride, be sure to hit the subscribe button. And if you like today's content, be sure to give us a thumbs up down below. Finally, most importantly, as always, remember that you are loved and you are enough, and please go reach out to those around you and remind them that they are loved as well. I'm JP the Stable Cyclist. Have an amazing day. We'll see you next time.